Good afternoon to all of our friends in Europe, and good morning to all of our friends in North America. Thank you very much for joining Maintegrity for what we hope is a very informative discussion about mainframe cybersecurity and resiliency. So, we're here to talk a little bit about what the real cutting edge of security is and all of the defenses that you need to put in place to ensure that you're as cyber-proofed as you can be under the circumstances. Criminals these days are much more resourceful. They use AI. Um, they're well prepared. There are thousands and thousands of them. So a normal site would have 2 or 3 or 4, maybe a large site would have half a dozen security people. But oftentimes it's really a part-time job. How can we expect that you're going to keep up with um, environments where they have thousands of well-trained engineers working against you? And now AI even explaining many of the differences between mainframes and other environments. The other real major change is that mainframes are now the center of everything that's going on. They're connected to everything. Big data moving around, all of those kinds of things need to have the best security that you can put in place. So we talk about improved COS defenses. COS was designed many years ago, and security was not baked in at the very original level. RACF, ACF2, Top Secret provide excellent identity control. And when mainframes weren't attached to the internet, that was probably sufficient. But with all the new tools available to cyber attackers, it's now very important that your defenses are up to speed. One of the things you have to defend against is ransomware. Not only do you have to detect ransomware, you have to remove it. We'll go into that in the body of the presentation, but we're also going to go into subjects like rogue encryption. Encryption can be a benign or a very good defensive process. You have to be able to identify the rogue encryptions, the ones that come from outside. They're a favored attack vector of most criminals now. So they're going to try and take out something very valuable to you, encrypt it under their own key, and render your site unavailable. Internal attacks. This has been a problem for a long time. So behavior analysis is important in dealing with internal attacks. But there are some things that are very fundamental to ZOS that need to be protected against as well. IBM has said for decades, you must ensure that programs, bad programs, unauthorized programs do not get authority. So they can't go to key zero. They cannot use supervisor state sort of activities to bypass security, to bypass SMF. That's ultra important to defend against, because if you can defend adequately against that, most of the other attack vectors will be shut off. So we talk about the need for authority checking, and I think we're the only product in the world that can actually dynamically identify an authority change, which should never take place in a normal production system. Instantaneous damage control. Another thing that's really important. If I identify a problem at the speed of current computing and hardware, the problem can get so big that I can't really react to it if I'm a human being, no matter how smart or how fast I am. Humans do not work at machine speed. So being able to stop the damage immediately in milliseconds is very important. Again, another very unique feature of Maintegrity CSF. AI integration. Everybody wants to use AI for security. AI depends on good data, and the actions that we take in recovery complement AI. The alerts that we raise complement the investigation process that AI enables. So those are the kinds of capabilities that you need to make sure that you have in addition to good AI tools in Splunk or maybe IBM TDZ, some of those other tools um, still need good data to operate on. And if you're not seeing advanced alerts like we have, you're not seeing the situations that are active in a mainframe, AI will be ineffective. So we'll go over that in a couple of minutes too. Our newest announcement this morning is data breach and network awareness. This is a really big deal. Most attacks, most successful attacks on mainframes, and there are quite a few, take place because something in the network was compromised. That something, that network node, may belong to your bank or your airline or your environment, but it may also belong to a partner organization that may not have the same sort of security that you have in your environment. So it's very important to be able to watch the network and be able to understand when there are anomalies that come up that are the trademark of attacks in progress. Again, instantaneous damage control, very, very important. Recovery assist. Well, you know, no amount of security products or layers is going to be sufficient for every single type of attack that can be imagined. So we have to be absolutely certain that we can use the most advanced tools that are available, like mutable backups from IBM or Dell or Hitachi. Those are key elements in the recovery, and we'll show you how we um, work with those. But compliance is a very big deal here too. And all of these other tools make for better security. And when you have better security, you will always have better compliance. So we'll go through a little bit of a element by element. How does it fit with NIST and DORA in a couple of minutes? But I'll move right on because the first thing, unlike most of the discussions that we get into, it's not going to be just how wonderful these things are. We're actually going to show you. So let me go directly to how we would envision a real live attack taking place and how that would how we would take corrective action during that. So I'm going to start this little video. It's 2.5 minutes. I think you'll find it very instructive.
This demo will show how Maintegrity, CSF, can detect and stop a data encryption attack on an IBM mainframe in real time. On the left side of the screen, we have an email inbox where alerts to the support team will appear. On the right, there's a TSO session representing how an attacker might operate. The attacker is about to submit a batch job that leverages hardware encryption to corrupt a number of files. Let's go ahead and submit that job. Now I'll switch over to SDSF to view the job's status in ZOS. As you can see, CSF has already detected the rogue encryption and automatically quiesced the process, stopping the attack in under 1 second. In many environments, detection can take hours. This is near instant. On the left, you'll notice a real-time alert has been delivered to the support team's inbox. Clicking on the alert opens CSF, confirming that the job has been suspended. Below, we can see the job name and the user who submitted it. A simple drill down reveals additional details: job name, job ID, and submitter credentials. Support staff can also view the datasets impacted by this attack. Here's a list of the affected datasets. Continuing the investigation, I can check whether this job has a legitimate business purpose. If it's a false alarm, I can simply resume the job. But in this case, it's unauthorized, so I'll cancel it. Switching back to my TSO session, you can see that the malicious job has indeed been canceled. Back in the support interface, since the job was canceled, I can now click into CSF Recovery Assist. By clicking here, CSF automatically generates the necessary recovery JCL behind the scenes. This JCL uses tools that restore at the dataset level, pulling from IBM safeguarded copies, Dell snapsets, or Hitachi snapshots, as well as conventional backups. Here we see the 5 datasets that were impacted. These are the ones I'll be restoring. All that support staff need to do is submit the recovery job. For demo purposes, I'll skip that step and cancel out. Once done, I mark the alert as resolved. Now the interface shows the incident status as resolved. This case is closed. By automatically suspending suspicious activity in real time, CSF gives support staff the breathing room to investigate thoroughly and take precise, controlled actions, while ensuring no additional damage occurs.
Now, that was pretty quick, but I think it is representative of what we see in a real world environment. Being able to stop that encryption attack means that the damage is relatively easy to recover from because the scope of the problem has not gotten so big that that poor mere mortals can't deal with it. So we'll talk a little bit more. Gary will tell you a little bit more about how instantaneous damage control can assist in any type of attack that we would identify. And we literally identify 50 or more attacks that are not handled in normal ZOS. But what's the point here? Mainframes were very trustworthy in years gone by. But as they got attached to more and more networks, they end up being adjacent to compromised network nodes, Windows machines, Linux machines, VPNs that get hacked into. These devices may or may not be owned by the organization involved. So it means you have to monitor them centrally because you won't have control over those network environments. Also, specialized ransomware as a service software companies that go into a revenue sharing model with attackers lead to various capabilities. They'll custom make software for an attack on a particular company that criminals can then go on the web and acquire via a revenue share model. AI is also playing into this because not only are those sophisticated attacks one by one planned out, AI helps launch dozens, thousands of them at the same time. But these, as we all know, can be state sponsored. And that's where we're seeing potentially thousands of people in North Korea, Russia, China, other places where their sole means of income is a successful ransom attack. Lots of motivation, lots of skill, lots of sophistication. Our motto is trust but verify. It's too bad that that wasn't used in lots of cases where the mainframe data was actually breached. It's not so much that the mainframe itself, that the attack took place against BRACF or ACF2 or the other tools on the mainframe. It's actually that a trusted environment in the network became rogue and then started to do things that were a major problem for these customers. So one that's kind of gone full circle is the Anthem attack, Anthem Health attack in 2015. There are 79 million healthcare records that resided on a number of different mainframes were stolen. And once they've been stolen, that information cannot be retrieved. So it was a data exfiltration attack combined with an encryption that took their mainframe services out for some period of time. But important thing here is that the litigation around this went on for 5 years. And when I've talked to experts in the area about what that looked like, that litigation was 43 different state attorney generals every day asking questions about how this was allowed to happen. Anthem had pretty good security. It wasn't like they were really lax, but there were all kinds of things in ZOS that are invisible unless you have our product in place. So they just couldn't see these things transpiring. So this attack went on for 3 months before it was first noticed. And the most recent numbers that I've seen is that the cost is not 260 million anymore. It's more like half a billion. Even more concerning, the same sort of thing, almost exactly, happened at United Health in 2024. So these things are still happening. The security really hasn't gotten that much stronger because we haven't implemented new tools able to deal with network environments as well as ZOS gaps. This one affected a third of Americans, took their health care away, couldn't get service at hospitals, couldn't go to a pharmacy and get a prescription. These are serious, serious problems. Most recent estimate, cost of $3 billion. When we look at those various attacks, and there are many more than I just showed you, there are breakdowns in process, there are breakdowns in technology, and there are breakdowns in people. Almost every attack had slow human response as one of the basic problems with the attack being allowed to go on for so long and be so broad. But you can only help people respond at machine speed if you have better technology. So technology that stops things when they look suspicious, that stop things when we know they are they are part of an attack vector. We stop them immediately. But things like SMF and other tools are often just too slow to react, slow to start the people on the product, not able to see deeply into what's going on. So how can you expect humans to respond well when they lack knowledge, they lack skills, and they lack information to work on? We have the roadmap. Processes have been mapped out in the NIST cybersecurity framework for a long time, in PCI, in Zero Trust, in DORA. These are important. They're important because they are the standards that we all have to live by, but they're also important because they are the process that we need to have in our sites today, not waiting for another problem to occur. I won't spend much time on this slide, and then I'll turn things over to Gary. Ransomware now is almost always a multi-pronged approach, and you have to deal with all of them. It's not enough to say, oh, I can identify an encryption in a few seconds, but I can't do anything about data exfiltration. It's not okay that we let them get access and install time bonds, and then we have to use a ransomware removal tool to get our system back before we should even bother trying to get the data back. Because if I get the data back, but I haven't brought the system back to its trusted state, they're just going to attack again using the exact same backdoors that they used before, and they'll ransom you again. So with that little level set, I'm going to turn things over to Gary, and he's going to talk specifically about things that Maintegrity CSF can do.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come and listen to us. So Maintegrity CSF, and that stands for Cybersecurity Framework, has a lot of function in it. Originally, and now it's getting back to being sort of 2017, 2018 time frame, we came out with file integrity monitoring, and we primarily did that so that we could meet the new requirements that were coming out in the payment card industry data security standard. At the time, and I think it was in version 3.2 of the data security standard, that file integrity monitoring became a requirement as opposed to a recommendation. So what file integrity monitoring does, we read the contents of a system and application files, create a hash key on the contents, tuck that key away, recreate it periodically, and if the keys have changed, you know the file's changed, and then we raise an alert that something's happened and that kind of thing. The FIM component also auto-detects many system libraries, so you can get it set up and working on your system libraries very quickly. The system does have a mechanism which enables you to tell expected changes from unexpected changes and take different actions when the change is expected versus unexpected. And you know, we really developed a bunch of the sort of ancillary components in the product, in the framework product now, for file integrity monitoring, but it turns out that they're pretty useful for other components as well. And these are things like email notifications, checking for change requests, in other change control tools and that kind of thing. And these functions are now sort of key enabling components of the product that we now call a cybersecurity framework. So, and it's funny how fast time goes by, but in 2023 we announced the availability of our early warning feature. And with this feature, we provided the ability to detect and suspend tasks, like you saw in the demo, that exceed thresholds for encryption, for mass writing, for mass deletions, and that kind of thing. The early warning offering was expanded following that initial offering to include things for detecting reconnaissance activities, and these are things like somebody going in and looking around a bunch of your ProcLib data sets or your ParmLib data sets, or even doing things like doing RACF LD commands to see what access a specific TSO user has against different data sets. There's other stuff that we've added to the early warning product as well. There's some really nefarious things, and I think Al talked about this a little bit. But if you have somebody running along in a TSO session or a batch job, and all of a sudden they gain APF authorization, we'll detect that. We can stop them. We can tell you about it. And so that's really a useful thing. You know, somebody shouldn't be able to do a set prog to add an APF library in the middle of your production window. A key differentiator for this early warning component is that it takes action immediately when an event occurs. You saw the suspension of a job in the demo earlier. You can also cancel a user or issue operator commands, a whole variety of things. You could submit a batch job. And this ability to take action immediately when a damaging incident is occurring really provides next level security to the OS platform. You can stop damage when it's going on. You can then go and investigate and make sure you understand why that damage is going on or what the real kind of characteristics are of the stuff that's going on, and then take the appropriate action. When we were developing, a lot of the ideas that are in the early warning component aren't necessarily from Maintegrity. We really talked to a number of independent penetration testers. They're well known in the ZOS industry, the ones that we talked to, and we really put in place a bunch of the ideas that they told us that we should be looking for in an early warning product. And some of these people who are doing penetration testing have installed our product on their own systems, and they tell us that they can't really break in when our product is installed. If some of you, and there's a number of people from Europe on the call today, have to comply with DORA, this is a big thing. DORA says that you should have independent penetration testers check out your systems periodically every year or 2 years or something. And if the penetration testers that we're using say they can't break in, that's probably a good thing for you. Today we announced the availability of NetWatch, our data exfiltration product. To me, this is the holy grail of cybersecurity function. Only if you can stop data exfiltration can you say that your data is truly secure. We are now able to detect the transmission of mainframe data over network links and stop it if it exceeds a client-defined threshold. This is big. We can monitor TSO and batch in tools like FTP, IND dollar file, SSH, etc. This function is built on the cybersecurity framework, and that means it will be able to whitelist known jobs and users and send emails on alerts as well as open incidents and third-party products. Basically, you get all of the supporting function that exists in the framework that the other components currently enjoy, including the ability to stop the transmission in its tracks. This trifecta of products really provides the type of security that the mission-critical applications that run on z/OS deserve. Finally, we have a component that lets you control the releases of applications that are implemented into your production environment. It enables separation of duties, comparison of releases of applications to show differences between those releases, and it can even tell after you have implemented a new release of an application on an LPAR if all of the components match what they are supposed to be, and if any components are back leveled and which back level they came from. As I touched on in the previous slide, the supporting functions in the framework are available to all of the individual components. This provides a robust set of capability that includes enabling you to suspend tasks that exceed thresholds. Suspending a suspicious task or user is a really useful function. It enables an investigation on a suspicious task to be undertaken when a task crosses the threshold, knowing that it's not causing any additional damage to your environment. After an investigation concludes, you can cancel the job if it's malicious or resume it if it's benign. That's a really important function. So cybersecurity framework contains 3 human interfaces and 1 machine interface. And in truth, the product CSF only supports 1 interface, and that's its RESTful API. We have exposed the functions of the product by using the REST API in the batch interface, the ISPF interface, and the browser interface. If you get an incident in an email, it will contain a link to the incident in the browser interface. This incident record will contain all of the forensic information that CSF has gathered about the incident, and it also provides the capability if a response is necessary. CSF is a very powerful product, and it enables a level of control on your workload that z/OS sites have not had before. With this power comes responsibility. Care must be taken not to interfere with production work. To meet this requirement, CSF contains workload discovery capability, extensive whitelist capability, and the ability to exclude specific programs, jobs, and users from some of the security threshold features. For instance, CICS regularly impersonates other RACF users. One of the things CSF detects is user ID impersonations. In CICS's case, this impersonation is required to perform its functions, and we provide the capability to whitelist CICS so these types of alerts won't generate false positives. This is similar for the jobs in your batch stream and other production components. The workload discovery capability will collect information about the workloads running on an LPAR and gather a list of jobs and users which exceed your thresholds. This list can be reviewed and the discovered jobs added to a whitelist. If the job continues to conform to its usage characteristics, it will not generate an alert. However, if it does exceed a characteristic by more than a certain amount, and I think the default is 15 or 20%, it will generate an alert. And this is also true for the new NetWatch component. Since CSF is watching what your workload is doing, it will understand if any of your files have been damaged and which those files are, which files those are. CSF contains the ability to take recovery JCL templates and customize them with the files that have been damaged and restore these from a previous backup. In addition, because we know when the files were damaged, we can advise you on which backups are the best candidates to restore from. We have interfaces to the immutable vendors including IBM, Hitachi, and Dell. Because CSF contains an FIM component, we can add a final step to a recovery process which creates a hash key and compares it to the key contained in our vault. This gives you complete confidence that the file that was restored was the file that you want in production. Back to you, Al.
Thanks, Gary. I hope that was helpful. We like to go through uh, what how CSF really interoperates with ZOS, but also other tools like ServiceNow and um, ITS, BMC's ITSM, RAMI products, also Splunk and others. So we always think of excuse me, CSF as being part of the ecosystem. We have to work with others. The REST API connections are very important in that environment. But one of the most recent integrations that we've done uh, is to, to make sure that we're using AI, exploiting, providing the information that AI needs in order to help you manage your environment better. So we don't require that you have an AI tool. We don't actually um, require anything to run other than ZOS. But when we do encounter other products, it's very useful to be able to share information and cooperate with those products and have a bi-directional communication. That means we can have an if then else sort of environment set up. But it's really important to understand what AI can do, but also what it can't do. You know, when I started in the business many years ago, there was an old adage, garbage in, garbage out. If if even the smartest AI tools don't have the right information up to the second, provided with advanced detection and the ability to freeze the bad guy so that the damage isn't getting worse, if you don't have that capability, then you're going to fight back long after the effect. And the problem is, even if AI makes some suggestions, you still have to wait for human beings to react. And they don't, when we're talking about things at machine speed, they don't react nearly quickly enough. It's complicated also by the fact that you actually have to get the right data to AI to begin with. And that, you might think that SMF contains everything that's going on, but SMF was built as an accounting tool. It was never supposed to be a security tool. It's been kind of pressed into that process, but it doesn't really fit. It's slow to react. Oftentimes things are aggregated. For instance, it will eventually tell you that there's an encryption going on, but it will not tell you whether that was an approved encryption or a rogue encryption that we don't know where it came from. That's kind of key information because encryptions are probably going on in your environment all the time. So if you can't separate the wheat from the chaff, this is why whitelisting is important. It's why we are able to determine the difference between things that are nefarious or don't fit in, or because we know what is common, because we learn about your environment as we go forward, we then can say what is abnormal. So these are all important elements that need to work together. And AI has a role in that environment, but if it's not getting the right data, it's not going to give you the kind of reaction that you want. So you have to have instantaneous action. You have to have stopped the damage in flight so that by the time people and AI react, by the time data is downloaded, that problem hasn't gotten so big that you're now required to take a major outage. And as we saw from earlier, those outages can be days and the costs can be immense. So it's really important to understand what AI can do and what it can't. Thinking about it as a panacea is not really deep enough. Thinking about it as the ominous threat used by criminals is also kind of one-dimensional. You have to look at the whole environment, and that's what CSF does. So it provides the kind of information that's necessary. It provides um, the knowledge about what's transpiring in your environment, what uh, behavior actions have changed, and CSF gives you this gift of time to react, which is good for people. It's also good for AI because that damage isn't getting worse while we're doing our investigation and making the right decisions because we're not rushed into the bad decisions that can cause even more damage. Um, you know, this is very important in the context of zero trust, NIST, DORA compliance. CSF plus AI is a wonderful solution. And, we don't believe that the correlation of massive amounts of data from firewalls and distributed machines that things like Splunk can do very well. We don't believe that we need to do those in our product. We need to make the information available to the tools that are already in place. Why change the procedures just because we now have the world's best uh, detection environment? We just feed those in a consistent manner. The other thing that we are really excited about is NetWatch. Gary made the very good point that this is the holy grail in this environment. This is what has been totally missing from the ZOS environment. Like many of the other things that we went over, there is nobody else that provides this sort of capability in the ZOS environment. ZOS is still the center of high volume processing. And if for some reason some distributed environment, some network node is compromised, whether it's yours or whether it's somebody else's, that can be used to move laterally within the network and find the repository with the most amount of sensitive data and do my research as a criminal, do my research over maybe several days or weeks even. All of those things have trademarks. But one of the things that is really clear is if a network node that used to ask for data every 10 seconds suddenly asks for reams and reams and reams of data, we can identify those kinds of things in the network and we can pause them. We can stop them. We can stop them dead in their tracks. We can actually make a data exfiltration stop. This is a big deal in the sites where they had huge data losses. Those data losses went on for months. Maintegrity CSF will give you the knowledge about what's happening in your environment. Network nodes that no longer react in the manner that they used to. So all of a sudden their behavior changes. It's a little bit like monitoring for insiders. But you have to remember that all of those network nodes are by default trusted. Otherwise, you wouldn't give their access to them and to your valuable data. It is imperative that you know that they are continuing to work in the manner that was approved. So that's what endpoint monitoring is all about. So first of all, you have to start out by saying, well, what's attached to what partitions and what applications? So to be able to discover the attached networks on the fly, very important. They change all the time. Very important that you know about that. CSF knows all about those kinds of things. So we know what is normal for those network nodes, and therefore we can decide whether we need to take corrective action with them or whether they should be allowed to proceed. Um, when we get an alert, when we generate an alert, when we see something that's abnormal, then we can kill that link or we can simply raise an alert. That's an option like everything else in CSF. What actions we take, what countermeasures we take are optional and they are at the choice of the customer. And not only that, the leadership of what should be done and what groups inside the company need to be associated with that can be built right into our user interface. So when you get one of these things like a data breach, people know what to do. As Gary said, we're looking at things like TSO usage. We don't allow a secondary link in TSO. It's a very simple thing to do. That would be a very simple attack vector. Oh, instead of just my basic communication TSO environment, I start up another link. Well, that other link could very easily be a storage environment where I'm taking the information from the screen that TSO is giving me and putting that aside in a file, which I will sometime later transmit to some location that's not in your environment. That's the kind of thing we have to look for. We also have to look for FTPs that violate their normal pattern or are unknown. The SSH environment has to be monitored so that even if I'm in a secure attached environment, I'm playing by the rules. I'm not changing the way that I operate. And good old IND dollar file or batch processes that send data out are also monitored. That's what data breach protection is all about. But the key again is to take action instantly. Because we can do a resume, we can also do a suspend. It's a little bit kind of a backwards discussion there, but I don't have to worry too much about suspending a particular link or suspending a particular task, depending what part of CSF you're in. Don't have to worry about that if I can just resume and then things take off exactly from where they were. So if it looks suspicious, I investigate it. I say, oh, wow, that was okay. That's some new operation from applications or whatever. They want that to go ahead. Resume. I just hit the button that says resume. If I decide it's really an awful attack environment, or I simply don't know, then I should push the cancel button. And not only will that cancel that activity outright, it will actually invoke our recovery tools so that you can recover using the knowledge that we have about what triggered the alert in the first place. But a big deal is that we also can see, nobody else can do this that I know of, we also see the user IDs that are behind those transactions. So if we see a user ID violate in one place, we can stop it immediately in that place, but we can also disable the capability to use that user ID somewhere else to try some other type of attack. That's not really available in a real-time environment today in ZOS. Even with quarantine capability and RACF and those kinds of capabilities, this is a real revoke function. So once we've identified a bad actor, we're going to make sure they can't do anything. And with that, that takes me pretty much wraps up what we're going to talk about in terms of technology. But why does that matter? If DORA matters to you, if NIST compliance matters to you, if litigation avoidance matters to you, if Being complying with standards matters to your organization. These are the kinds of things that will be strengthened with um, Integrity CSF. The information that is necessary, the actions that need to be taken are in real time. They're not actions that take place an hour later, 2 weeks later, 3 months later, after the data's escaped. Because you have to remember the insidious part about data exfiltration is that that data is gone. It is gone and it is never coming back. And even if it's encrypted, you know, these days, criminals just offload it and then they use their cracking tools to try and crack the encryption on it. It might take a while, but they have your data. This will eventually fail. We know that. So these are the kind of problems you have to protect against. This is not optional. So what we say is we need to integrate into an overall compliance environment. So as I said to begin with, all of the standards kind of look the same in terms of what they tell you you need to do. You need to be able to identify. You need to be able to protect. You need to be able to detect. And you need to be able to respond. Those are very important things. We often think about the one that's left, the fact that we have to recover. But frankly, if if you can respond really quickly, you and detect even faster, you may not have to recover at all. But you can guarantee with this tool, you won't have to recover as much. So all of those processes are laid out in the various standards. All we had to do was build in the specific technology improvements that allow us to be consistent with those uh, process guidelines and those recommendations. Be consistent with what the standards are there for. The standards are not there to make your life difficult, although they can certainly do that. And they can expose you to an awful lot of scrutiny if you don't follow them. But the fact of the matter is, they're mostly really good security suggestions and process that you should have in place. So we add the technology component, the software component that helps you to be compliant. But the other thing that's really important, not only do we need process, not only do we need technology, we need to include people. People that react at people speed, not at machine speed. So our UI environment is a very standard UI environment that most open systems folks and very quickly all the existing ZOS stuff will migrate towards because it presents all of the information in a human consumable manner, presents all that information so that you can make the right decisions. But before that even happens, before that real-time alert comes in and one click gets you into our UI environment, before that has even happened, we've stopped the damage. So along with the most advanced UI in the ZOS environment, we provide you with the time to investigate, the time to take the right action. And then we integrate it with the other tools that you have. So it can be an end-to-end process. We integrate with IBM tools. We talked about that. We integrate with BMC tools, Rocket tools, tools from all kinds of other vendors, including tools that are actively running in the cloud. So we can share information with the ServiceNow instance. We can we can send alert information to a Splunk environment. Those kinds of things. That provides you with the rigor to respond to any questions about compliance. So we think this is a really big change to the environment. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up. we've gone over all of the various elements that we have in the CSF product. But I would love, I'd really like to talk about our support environment. And we support our customers in ways that are unusual for software companies in these days. Yes, we have the right technology. We'll give you the right kind of advice so that you implement it in a way that's manageable, that prevents false positives, that allows you to react. But we're going to help you build the kind of security environment that you have always wished you had in place. But I just cannot leave this subject without saying mainframes aren't immune to attacks. They have given up a lot of data in a lot of cases. You don't have to believe me on this. There is all kinds of information on the web, and I used my very good friend ChatGPT to help me go through an awful lot of that information that is clearly available in the web environment and come up with where the shortcomings were. That helped drive our tools. Pen testers who do this for a living break into systems. The score is pen testers 0, CSF 3. So we've spotted them in lots of cases. We have no instance where that we know of that even a very adept pen tester has been able to break through. These are the kinds of things, the kinds of zero trust facilities and capabilities that you have to have. With the changing world and all kinds of network nodes attached to your mainframe, the question is, can you really risk doing nothing anymore? For years, that's been the old crutch. Mainframes really don't get attacked that much, do they? Well, afraid to say they do. And unfortunately, the consequences when they start giving up the data that they're put in charge of protecting, those consequences can be dire indeed. We can grind through that, and I can say things that scare the pants off of me. Maybe you would for you too. But I think the point of this is you need to get things moving in this environment. You need to call us today. You need to understand how this will fit into your environment, how this will protect your corporation, how this will make compliance easier to deal with, and frankly, how this will save you time and effort, because so many of these processes are automated. So many of these false alarms are limited. So I'll leave it at that point. We're not easy to find. We're not hard to find. We're very active on the web. You can join our LinkedIn channel. You can go to YouTube and ask for information about Maintegrity. We believe this is the cutting edge of ZOS security as it exists today. And by the way, as Gary mentioned, we continuously improve this product. So if you think it's terrific today, it'll be even better tomorrow. So with that, I'll wrap up the presentation. I'll suggest that everybody has a chance to get back to work. I don't know if there were any comments or questions in the chat window, but I'll just see if I can open that up. I see there are a couple of chats. Don't know that there is any real questions in the chat, but I'm happy enough to stay on and maybe take some questions in line if you want to put them in the chat box. Otherwise, I will thank you very much for your attendance today, and I'm hopeful that we will have an opportunity to talk in the near future.